Hi, everyone. This is Jane Grohl, CEO of the DevOps Institute, and I'm delighted today to present to you the State of DevOps and Modern Skills for IT Professionals. I'm particularly delighted because this webinar is being brought to you in partnership with Sureskills, one of DevOps Institute's accredited training partners out of Ireland, and a partner that we are delighted to be working with on helping the community upskill. So thank you, Sureskills, for the opportunity to be here today. And I hope some of the information that we present to your audience is insightful and hopefully sparks some really good ideas. So a little bit about me. I am CEO and co-founder of the DevOps Institute. I've been an active trainer for a fairly long time. I'm a certified Scrum Master. I'm an ITIL expert. I think most importantly, I'm a former IT director growing up in the operations space. I'm also the author of the Agile Service Management Guide. So if you're interested in downloading a free copy of that ebook, I'll share that with you at the end of today's session. So what are we going to talk about? Well, again, very, very delighted that Sureskills is hosting me today so that I can share with you the state of DevOps 10 years later. Also look at some trends in the marketplace, particularly as far as employment trends. I'm really particularly excited to share with you the results of the recent DevOps Institute UpSkilling Enterprise DevOps Skills Report. And then, you know, I come from the ITSM space, so I would be remiss if I didn't wrap up by sharing some of the innovations in service management, particularly as they relate to the evolution of ITSM professionals and the upskilling of the service management community. So if you're not familiar with the DevOps Institute, we are very committed to advancing the humans of DevOps. We are an open membership community, so I invite you to go to our website. I'll share with you at the end how to do that. Become a member. It is free. There's quite a lot of assets, continuous learning assets that are available to you. We are not a training company. We do not do any direct training. We work through partners like Sureskills. Our mission is really to help the human side of DevOps deal with personal and organizational transformation. So we focus very specifically on the skills gap, but we also look at the holistic needs of people. And we know that culture is a very strong element of DevOps success. So our community is comprised of IT professionals, education partners across the globe, talent acquisition organizations, and business leader, all in the hopes of paving their way to an organizational digital transformation. We recently introduced an SKIL skill framework. At the end of today's session, I'll introduce you to the 4 quadrants of skill, and you'll hopefully be able to see some of the other opportunities that are available to you through DevOps Institute. Again, looking at it from a free membership perspective. So let's start our story now with, you know, why is DevOps emerging today? Why is this important? And what do we need to do in order to be able to accommodate the faster acceleration of technology in the world? So you probably were not born during the first, second, and third revolution. Your parents and grandparents might have been, right? But that was the first introduction of what you might not consider, but they did, technology in government, in companies, and in homes. So the introduction of steam so we could move products around, certainly water power, water internally right into your home, electricity on demand, the beginnings of electronics. I'm old enough to know what a Walkman is, right? So the beginning of electronics to enhance our lives, and the really seeds of IT. The goal of the first, second, and third revolution was to make quality of life better, right? So that you did have indoor plumbing, you did have indoor power, you did have the beginning of electronics, you could compute it at home. And it was what led us to what we now call the digital revolution, which is very much focused on the cloud and the Internet of Things, right? So interconnectivity is an important part of it. And in the digital revolution, IT needs to really look at speed and quality as not being opposing ends of the same metric, but absolutely the key elements of customer experience, right? How fast can we bring innovation to the market? How fast can we keep products and services updated? And what is the customer experience? Because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that counts. Well, we're quickly heading into the fourth revolution. You feel the seeds of it today, right? Hello, Alexa, right? You feel the seeds of it today in AI, in robotics, in machine learning, different ways of working, different places to work in. And society's experience is changing very much based on the innovations that are available through technology. Look at autonomous cars, which are very quickly becoming a reality. Look at all of the technical changes that are happening and becoming the norms in our life. So we are very quickly at the beginning of what we call the fourth revolution. Well, if we're in a digital or fourth revolution, we need to change in IT the way that we work. Historically, we have grown up as a system of systems. And you have to realize IT is a fairly young part of the business. And so, the first migration was to move away from linear waterfall software development into agile. And so agile, based on practices from Scrum and practices like scaled agile, really focused on software engineering, right? Really looked at software development and created its own set of practices, vocabulary, tools, and ways of working. But it was very self-contained. It was limited to mostly software engineers, right? Product owners, Scrum masters, two pizza teams, all of that. And what came out of the Scrum team went into a different system, which was really build, release, and deploy, or release management, or you may be calling it continuous integration, continuous deployment, or in the ITIL space, you're looking at service strategy, design, and transition. Regardless of whatever you call it, it is still a self-contained system, right? What comes out of the Scrum team goes downstream into another set of practices, another set of vocabulary, another set of people, another set of tools. And that's fairly contained as well. And then when the product or the code is deployed, either continuously through continuous deployment or continuous delivery, then we enter into another system, which is post-production. And so you might call it service operation, you may call it incident management, you may call it support, and most recently, you may call it site reliability engineering. But it is the post-production operational system that keeps that product or that service delivering value on an ongoing basis. But it is, again, a very distinct system. The problem is we grew these systems up separately. We didn't grow them up together. And sometimes we did not realize that we're all part of the same value stream, right? The stream of value from an idea to the realization of value by a customer. And so each of these individual systems, while they stand alone successfully, they don't necessarily interoperate. And that's part of the reason why DevOps is so important. DevOps is encouraging us to increase flow. DevOps is encouraging us to shorten feedback. DevOps is encouraging us to practice and experiment. So go smaller and go faster requires that we all become systems thinkers. So if we're going to become systems thinkers, then we also need to have an army of multidimensional professionals. You might be hearing the term T-shaped professionals. We're looking at growing your depth and your breadth of knowledge, so deep and wide. So if you're not familiar with T-shaping, I'll give you a very brief explanation. Your core competency is your specialty, and that's the stem of your T. You might be an infrastructure engineer, you might be a software developer, right? You might be a QA engineer, and you've spent time, however much time you've been in industry, really grooming and evolving and maturing those skills. It's likely how you self-identify. Well, today it's not enough. Today, you need to supplement your deep competency with a broad range of other skills, and that's the top of your T. So if you're a software developer, you need to fill the top of your T with some basic testing skills or basic security skills, right? So test-driven development is a real thing. We'll see evidence of that coming up very shortly. But you need to be able to think about what skills, what broad general skills do you need to add to the top of your T to be multidimensional and ultimately be a T-shaped professional, right? And I'll give you some insight into that as we go along. We want you to be T-shaped. By the way, don't undervalue soft skills. I'll demonstrate that in a second as well. We want you to be broad-based. We want you to fill the top of your T with new skills, but which skills? And hopefully I'll be able to provide some insight into that as well. So in 2018, October, DevOps Institute fielded an important global community research project. We opened a 30-minute survey to the global community that really looked at which skills are nice to have, must have, nice to have, and perhaps not as important. And the results were really insightful and actually very, very deep. From a fascination perspective, over 1,600 people spent over 30 minutes completing this survey. Regionally, we saw obviously a very healthy representation from Europe and North America. But again, we had good samples from Latin America, from India, and from parts of Asia. Not as much from China, but we felt like we got a really good representation, not only globally, but from size of an organization. 61% were from organizations over 500 employees, and also from the different layers of individuals. So we know that 69% of the respondents could have some type of a hiring role, from a lead to a manager to a director all the way up to the C-suite. We also know that we had a healthy representation of individual contributors, so we could see the difference between the two. I'm really proud of the fact that when we launched this project, we did it in partnership with Evelyn Ehrlich, who is a Chief Research Analyst for DevOps Institute, formerly a Forrester Vice President and Research Director. So Evelyn has a vast amount of experience doing this type of research so that we would be able to validate that the research, the sample sizes, and the results were accurate. So when we looked at the topology of the respondents, it was really kind of interesting how they broke out their DevOps approach. If you look at 19% having add-on responsibility for one or more members, so again, a very ad hoc approach, right? And then you kind of move to project by project, which is the DevOps service team, right? So they were starting to adopt some DevOps practices on a project basis, to the movement of a cross-functional team, again, T-shaped team, that was distributed among many different IT teams and business units. And then at the far end, the whole, central DevOps team, which owns governance, right? Hopefully not a DevOps management office, a DMO, right? Like a PMO, really kind of decentralizing the DevOps topology so that it is more embedded in the individual teams than not. The good news is 37% of the respondents said they were currently hiring. And so the predominant thinking, which is even better news, is that they would prefer to hire from within their own organization. So your employer is very committed to helping you upskill if you work for an enterprise organization. We know there's a talent gap. We know that the skills transformation is important, but the respondents clearly demonstrated that they're committed to growing their internal teams as well as bringing in different skills from the outside. Which roles are being hired? Well, DevOps engineers and DevOps managers certainly emerged as the most predominant role, despite the fact we really don't have a standard on what a DevOps engineer or DevOps manager actually is. That's becoming a little bit clearer as time goes by. And then you work your way through and you see a lot of operational roles all the way through to site reliability engineering, right, which is an actual role, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly. So having shown you kind of the core aspects of the report, let's drill down into which skills really were considered must-have, nice to have, and not important. And we'll look at a couple of different categories. So if we split out the respondents into 3 layers within the organization, we have the individual contributor, the individual practitioner. We have the management layer, and the management layer is likely going to be the hiring layer. And then we have the C-suite. Well, the most fascinating part of the results is that the management layer almost statistically agreed that process automation and soft skills were equally important as must-have. So your technical skills are important, certainly. Your process skills for intelligent automation, absolutely. But again, I think the biggest surprise was that your soft skills, or we call them human skills, were equally important to your automation and process skills. So think about that, because these are the people that would hire you, and have the ability to influence your hiring more than any of the other layers. So that was kind of fantastic. And again, we'll take a little deeper look at that. Soft skills, must-haves, really kind of in some ways gave us some assurance of what we would have expected, and also a couple of surprises. So not surprisingly, collaboration, cooperation, problem solving, interpersonal skills, the ability to share and transfer your knowledge, the ability to be flexible and adaptable, and personal value all came in as must-have, right? Organizations are recognizing that the cultural aspects of DevOps are very much dependent on humans who have good human skills and can work together well with integrity. So that's not a huge surprise. What's involved in grooming those skills may require some research and some depth, but again, not a really big surprise. You start to drill a little bit further, you start to see what is or known as soft skills. We call them human skills because soft skills are hard. Creativity, empathy, right? Customer experience skills. Those are skills that are, first of all, teachable. They're, you can acquire them, you could groom them, so they're not necessarily organic, but 51% creativity, 49% empathy, 44% customer experience really tells us that those are critical skills that are going to help shift us into the future, particularly when we look at customer experience skills. On the functional side, it was a little bit of a surprise that really operations showed up in the first 3 categories of must-have. Now, half the respondents identified as developers, half the respondents actually identified as operations. Again, were very, very surprised that they were almost statistically equal. And the number 1 functional skill was IT operations knowledge, partly because we're moving to the cloud and everybody needs to understand the cloud, partly because we are shifting so many activities to the left that the ability to stay blind to what happens after a product or feature comes out of the Scrum team is no longer acceptable. But you start to see the inkling of the T-shape, right, of the top of the T, where if you're a software engineer, you do need to have some core operations, infrastructure, and security skill. Again, doesn't have to be deep unless you find a new passion, but you absolutely have to have that. If you're an operations person, you need to understand SDLC, the software development lifecycle, application development and design, as well as QA and testing. So again, the data is very, very clear. While there's a healthy representation of nice to have for these skills, the skills that are must have, very operationally focused, particularly if you're a developer. And if you're an operations person, really some development capabilities or technical capabilities that maybe before you didn't think were important. If you're an operations person, for example, you now must know how to code, right? At least at the batch or the shell script level. On the technical side, it was no surprise that cloud. But next up came analytical knowledge, which you wouldn't necessarily think is technical, but for analytical knowledge being number 2, I thought that was critical thinking skills, right? Really the ability to observe and analyze, what's happening across an entire system. And then you start to work down and you start to see, more typical technologies. I was a little surprised that big data showed up, more as a nice to have than a must have, and a fairly strong not so important, despite the fact that we hear a lot about big data in the media, at conferences, and on social. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into what's in the report. I'll encourage you to download the full report at the end. It is pretty deep, and there is a lot of data that hopefully will help you shape your own personal skills portfolio. But I kind of want to wrap up with a little visit to service management and upskilling. You know, there's been some debate about the ongoing relevancy of service management. And the truth is, services will always need to be managed, right? Customers don't want products, they don't want features, they don't want applications. They want service. They want a service that will help them do something. So we know that services will always need to be managed. The question is how? Will they be managed the same way they've been managed in the past? When waterfall development was more prominent and there was a longer lifeline from the value stream from idea into deployment, or do we need to change a little bit of how we manage services? So let's take a look at the report's results on process. I found this very fascinating that the upper half of the must-haves had nothing to do with a specific framework, right? Software development lifecycle, #1 must-have skill. Process flow and analysis, right? The ability to understand, where the constraints are. Source control models, agility, not Scrum, right? Not Agile Manifesto. You know, it's more important to be agile than do agile is the message here. Test-driven development and deployment, systems thinking, right? None of those are aligned with a specific framework, a specific set of practices. Now, that does not mean that Scrum and ITIL and project management and program management are not important. In fact, they're very important. If you look at the lower half of process, you start to see that these emerge very much as nice to have, some cases must have, Scrum in particular, right? But what it's telling us is that the upper half of the process skills are human, right? There are critical thinking skills, and they are supported by frameworks and practices such as Agile or ITIL or project management or program management. So the message here is clear. Optimize the best practices that are included in those frameworks and practices. Don't be married to them, right? Groom your process and analysis skill. Use guidance from ITIL or Agile or Lean or any of the others to help you grow that skill. All right, so I hope you take that away as being important. Get ITIL trained, get Scrum trained, get DevOps trained, get program trained, project management trained, because hopefully through that training, you will be able to open your ability to be a better systems thinker, to be, to think about agility across an entire system, to analyze process flow, as opposed to just the entire framework. So a couple of things that I wanted to bring out as far as skilling goes in service management, both are new. So if you've not heard of site reliability engineering, this is an engineering approach to operations, right? It is a software engineering approach. So most site reliability engineers have some very, very basic coding capabilities, Python, they can write a shell script perhaps, or a batch file. But their ability to automate some manual tasks are certainly there. This is Google's approach to service management. Now, you're not Google, but the practices and principles that are emerging out of site reliability engineering are definitely gaining the attention of enterprises worldwide. Companies are hiring hundreds of SREs now as an operational role, but also embedding them into Scrum teams and multifunctional teams. The principles around SRE are pretty fantastic as well, right? Operate against service level objectives, right? So your service levels that you agree to, but have consequences if those service levels are breached, right? Give site reliability engineers and DevOps teams and Agile teams the ability to regulate their own workload, right? So some autonomy as opposed to governance, but with consequences and with policies, so that there are boundaries around which they can regulate their own workload, but it's basically more task-driven than governance-driven. time to make tomorrow better than today. One of the things I love about SRE is that SREs are granted 50% of their time to automate their way out of what's known as toil, right? To make tomorrow better than today. So toil is those manual, repetitive steps that we do in operations over and over and over again. And SRE says, if you're doing it over and over and over again, figure out a way to automate it so that, again, you can elevate your skills in other directions. And then, like DevOps, SRE very much supports failure as an opportunity to improve. We go small and fast, the failure is not as great. The ability to remediate certainly is better, but it also gives us an opportunity to fail mindfully so that we can practice and innovate. So if you're not familiar with SRE, I really do encourage you to do some research about it. You can read the book for free on the Google site. I think there's some really interesting aspects of service management that are built into SRE, and I think it is the future. Now, Axelos recently released the beginnings of ITIL 4. So the ITIL 4 Foundation book came out. There is honoring the past. So there's some practices that very much were retained from ITIL 3. They've introduced a new service value system. So there's definitely an alignment with value stream mapping and understanding the value stream and recognition that some of the practices, say from DevOps or Agile, are very, very important, like continuous delivery. To be fair, most of the ITIL library has not yet been released. So while the ITIL 4 Foundation book plays homage to DevOps and Agile, there isn't yet a lot of depth. So we've been promised that the future publications, which map to specific certifications, will give us more of that depth of knowledge and guidance. But the Foundation book is not a bad start, right? It does recognize that we need to go smaller, we need to go faster, and that value is still the center of the customer's need. And so I think that's important. If you look at the principles around ITIL 4, they come from the ITIL practitioner book that came out a couple of years ago. But again, they really do speak to where we are in terms of IT environment and where we need to be. Focus on value. Again, no dispute there. And it's something that DevOps, Agile, ITIL, and SRE all agree on. Progress iteratively with feedback. Well, again, that's a very agile approach where we look iteratively and incrementally. Start where you are. So you don't have to revert back to the beginning. You can start with whatever progress and whatever maturity you're at today. Encourage collaboration and promote visibility. There's your human skills, right? The need for cultural changes, the need for people to be a key part of this process. And then optimize and automate. So very much like site reliability engineering, the need for us to automate ourselves while we're automating the rest of the world becomes pretty clear. And then finally, on the service management side, I just wanted to introduce you to the principles of Agile Service Management. Shamelessly, I am the author of the Agile Service Management Guide. You can download it for free from the DevOps Institute's website under ebooks. But the core principle behind Agile Service Management is not to supersede or replace ITIL or SRE or any of the other service management frameworks. It's really a design concept, right? It's a systems thinking design concept that says we need to ensure that processes reflect Agile values, and more importantly, that we're designing just enough process, right? So how much process is just enough? You need to figure that out for your organization. There are practices and principles in Agile Service Management that align with Agile software development, including the concept of minimum viable process. So I invite you to download the free ebook, and of course I welcome your feedback on that. So thank you for taking the time with me today. Thank you, Sureskills, for giving me the opportunity to present. If you come away from today's session with anything, I hope you'll come away with these key takeaways. All three must-have skill categories from the upskilling report were agreed by all role types. Automation, process, and soft skills or human skills are equally important. So if you are focusing more on your automation skills and not enough on your process and your human skills, I would encourage you to pay attention to that and come up with a plan to increase those in the top of your T. We know that automation makes DevOps a success, but the report also revealed that process skills are essential if the automation is going to be intelligent, right? If we're going to use automation in the right way. Interestingly enough, soft skills and technical skills are equally important in a DevOps culture because DevOps culture is often considered to be the critical success factor that will define organizations that transform and organizations that don't. IT operations and security key functional skills, so everyone should have some of that in the top of their T. But business skills and vertical skills were only important in certain situations and to certain roles. So your ability in healthcare or manufacturing were perhaps interesting to certain industries, but certainly were not considered must-have. Again, what I think is the most important takeaway is that hiring from within is the most predominant thinking. So your employer, if you work for any type of enterprise, is willing and, by the way, is funding your ability to transform. So certification training through partners like Sureskills, continuous learning by becoming a member of DevOps Institute, reading, getting knowledge, sharing your ideas, all of that help you grow, and your organization is supporting your growth. So I hope all of you will take advantage of that. So again, thank you very much. I just want to take a second and introduce you to DevOps Institute's skill framework because it is the holistic continuous learning needs of the human of DevOps. So we know that skills really are aligned with certification, right? You'll put a certification on your CV or your resume. You'll look for learning paths to help you become a T-shaped professional. And if you're looking for a new job, you want a resource to find DevOps jobs, and all of those are available through our skill framework under S. But we know it's not enough. We know that you as a human of DevOps need insight. So research reports like the UpSkilling reports, ebooks like the Agile Service Management Guide, and a host of other content and articles is available to you through your free membership. So again, I hope you'll take advantage of that. Similarly, we know you need a forum for sharing ideas with like-minded people, maybe in different regions of the world or the same or similar types of vertical markets. So we introduce forums. We have an amazing Slack channel based on different topic areas. We help support a lot of different events. And we're introducing a new concept called skill ups, which are kind of like meetups, but you get to learn how to do something. And then, kind of last but not least is continuous learning occurs everywhere. So certification skills are great, but webinars like this hopefully give you some insight. Micro e-learning where you can, take little bite-sized pieces of video and different types of learning, and then non-certification workshops. So again, our SKIL or skill framework is really based on your needs to grow as an IT professional and to learn in a lot of different ways. It's a start anywhere, right? Start where it makes the most sense for you. And I hope, again, you'll take advantage of that. If you're interested in downloading the upskilling report, you can certainly go to DevOps Institute's website. There's a button on our homepage to download the report. We will be doing the report or the survey again, launching in August. And again, very happy that we have support from our partners and from many members of the DevOps community in being able to bring this project forward. So in August, stay tuned. We'll be opening the survey again. We're really interested in comparing year over year, and I hope you will download the report and share it with your manager, share it with your colleagues, and discuss what you think is accurate and perhaps for your environment, what you think may be different. So again, thanks again. I do hope you'll take advantage of our free membership. And I really want to call out Sureskills. Sureskills very graciously hosted us while we were in Ireland, giving us an opportunity to share this webinar with you. They're an amazing partner. They have a fantastic portfolio. And if you get a chance to go to their training rooms, there's a lot of history there, and they are very, very, very unique. So I hope this webinar has brought you some ideas and some insight. I hope to see you as a member of the DevOps community. And more importantly, I hope that your continuous learning journey is long and healthy. Thank you very much.